Welcome back to another episode of the Draft Dynasty Podcast here on the Fans First Sports Network, where it is all draft all the time. My name is Jeremy Betz, and I'm here with Andrew Wilbar. We just completed, well, not just, it's been a couple hours now, but we completed our FFSN Fantasy Football League that we do every year for this show and for those who listen and follow along, as well as some of our contributors on the FFSN feeds. But we just completed that, and we're going to do a recap of it for you here. It's going to be fun, a little bit of an inner look at the workings of our draft specifically, but we'll correlate some of that information over to your drafts as well. To do that with me, it's Andrew Wilbar. Andrew, how are you doing? It's late night as we're recording this, but we're going to get it done.
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to this draft. It's very intriguing how everything ended up falling into place. I definitely did not draft the team I thought I was going to, but I'm pretty satisfied with the results. A couple things could have done better, but overall I'm pretty happy with where my team's at.
Yeah, and I kind of agree from my perspective as well. I had a little bit of a glitch in the process and ended up auto-picking a couple players that I would have rather not auto-picked, but it's fine. They were not bad players necessarily, just not preferences for me. So my team looks a little bit different as well, but that's fantasy, right? Every draft you go into is going to be a little bit different. People prioritize different positions, they prioritize different players, and things get out of whack really quickly. And it was unique because as we're recapping this, you and I picked from completely different ends of this draft spectrum. I was picking number 2 overall after a very poor showing last year. And Andrew, as a champion of the league last year, you were picking last. And you did admirably, I thought, from the 10th position.
Yeah, I actually did a pre-draft trade. So the thing that sold me on Sleeper, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the app itself on my phone because it is always bogged down. I always have to update it. But the thing I like about it is that you can actually do draft day trading, which is something that I was saying before for years that fantasy leagues need to have instilled. You need to be able to trade draft picks like the actual draft. So I did that, and I traded out of the first round. I traded my 10th overall pick to Corey Eckenroth, who those of you that listened on the Steelers Fix, you know who he is. And then I traded back to the 6th pick in the second round, so the 16th pick for the 10th pick is what I had. And I ended up getting Drake London with that second pick. Of course, Josh Jacobs was my pick back at the 2-1, but I ended up moving up a few picks in the 3rd, 5th, and 7th round, so I was pretty satisfied with the return.
Yeah, and I thought your draft was good. And part of what we want to do here is grade the other person's draft. So we're going to do that here to start things out. And I'll get started with yours. I thought as you went down, and I'm not going to have this like by round here necessarily, because when you look at the Sleeper app from the draft recap and with the trades, it's hard to track where every pick was necessarily. So I'm just going to go into your starting lineup here. And I'm going to look at that, and then we're going to look at your bench. And so your starting lineup looks like this. Kyler Murray at quarterback, Josh Jacobs and James Cook as your starting running backs. Got Drake London and Tyreek Hill. George Kittle as your tight end. Chase Brown, who you just made another trade for, to end up grabbing him in kind of a wacky situation to close things out there. You've got DJ Moore at your other flex spot. We got 2 flex positions here. An empty kicker slot because of that trade. The Chiefs defense. And then the bench is as follows. 2 quarterbacks, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love. Running backs, Jaden Blue, Dylan Sampson, J.K. Dobbins. And wide receivers, Matthew Golden, Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley, and David Njoku. Honestly, Andrew, this to me is an A draft. And especially once you get the trade at the end here, it's just a solid A. I think that you don't really have any holes except for the obvious one at kicker, and you could probably not play a kicker all year and be just fine in a lot of cases.
I don't know if I go that far, but I was a little hesitant with the quarterback spot. Obviously, I didn't want to wait quite as long as what I did, but I ended up getting Kyler Murray. I was hoping Herbert or somebody else would fall. But the reason I dropped a kicker was because Jordan Love was still sitting there on the waiver wire at the end of the draft. So I picked him up, and then if I open up a roster spot somehow, and I will before week 1, I'll pick up a kicker again and keep him on there for this time. but I've got, I mean, we're talking the guys like Keenan Allen, even in the later rounds, I thought was decent value. But when it came to yours, I really liked it. So I always like running back heavy drafts, and you started off with two right off the bat with Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor, both of which I think could be really good plays this year, especially Bijan Robinson. You took him over Saquon Barkley, which I thought was a little surprising, but I don't hate it. Did you consider Saquon there, or how dead set were you on taking Bijan?
So this actually just kind of ended up being, I've taken a lot of Saquon in some other leagues early, and I wanted to switch it up a little bit. They're neck and neck for me at like the RB1 spot. I've got Bijan Robinson as my RB1 overall because I just think that Atlanta Falcons offense is going to be crazy, and Robinson's going to get a lot of work. But the Saquon like touches last year thing didn't bother me too much. But I just kind of wanted to switch things up a little bit from what I had been doing in some other leagues where I'm picking like 4th overall and I land Saquon Barkley because Justin Jefferson goes ahead and Bijan Robinson and Chase, or Jamar Chase. So switch it up a little bit. Plus, I mean, my team name's Closet Falcons fan. I love those Falcons players. So I'm going to get one of those guys if I can. So, yeah.
Well, that wasn't the only Falcons player you took. We'll get to another one later, but you ended up taking Lamar Jackson with the next pick, which I think is great. Our fantasy settings are more leaning toward just a standard for quarterbacks, where you have 4 points for the pass touchdown, 6 points for a rushing touchdown. So getting a guy like Lamar with that rushing touchdown upside, I think, is beneficial. And then you went 3 receivers in a row. I know that a couple of these might have been auto-picked. You had T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, and George Pickens after that. And there's definitely a lot of upside with each of those. I don't know which one you liked the best out of those.
Well, I did not like Garrett Wilson. That was an auto pick because I lost internet connection for a couple minutes there, right around my pick. And your pick of George Kittle is probably actually who I would have picked in that spot, because I would have had a draft slot ahead of yours in that round. But it's okay because I land George Pickens, who I think is going to be a wide receiver too this year, like for fantasy. I just think he's going to be really good with that offense. So I don't hate it. And if there's a wide receiver that I don't love, but also I could come around on because of volume, it's Garrett Wilson. So I don't hate it.
Well, George Pickens, maybe now that he's on a team that is known for the Super Bowl like the Cowboys, maybe that will be the difference maker for him. But enough said there. I do love George Pickens as a player. I don't know. We'll see. I don't hate him for fantasy purposes at all. I think he's going to get a lot of targets. Yeah. You end up going Tony Pollard in the 7th round, and this was where I was the most upset because I still need another running back at this point. I was hoping he would fall to me. I was 3 picks after you at the 7-5, and I ended up taking DJ Moore there, which I was okay with. But, man, that running back spot seemed good, and Pollard's just that safe, solid pick. And then after that, I know you got one of your favorite guys, Caleb Johnson. So you really rounded out that running back room really nicely there. And then pounded it with 3 more receivers after that, and Jordan Addison, Deebo Samuel, Stephon Diggs. Then you finally got your tight end, and then this was the Falcons guy with Kyle Pitts.
I'm the Kyle Pitts guy this year again.
Well, at least we're taking him in a more reasonable spot than where we've been taking him the past couple years in fantasy drafts. Were there any other tight ends along the way that you had considered? I know that, I mean, I'll be thanking your internet provider that you didn't get George Kittle, but were there any other tight ends between then and there that you that you would have considered?
Every time I was like, "Oh, I'm going to get one the next time around," the guys that I wanted were gone. So in the 8th round, I had my eyes on Evan Ingram and Tyler Warren. They both went before I was able to pick. And then it's kind of a break there. I felt like the value was a little bit better to go get like a Jordan Addison at that point in the 9th round. I know he's going to be on suspension, but I have 3 other wide receivers already. So, and last year he finished as a top 25 wide receiver. So he's going to get, I think, plenty of volume over there, even with the change in offense. So I wasn't necessarily looking at a tight end at that point. But then there was another run on tight ends the next round in Colson Loveland, and like Jonnu Smith even went, and like not saying any of those guys were. Colson Loveland's probably the guy I would have wanted in that spot, especially after the preseason performance from him. It looks like he's going to be a guy that is going to be that Caleb Williams is going to look at pretty early, but it just kind of never worked out for me to land one. So I just decided to wait. It's not a position. It's a position to me. If you don't get one of those top 3 guys, then you can just kind of play the waiting game and see who falls into your lap. And Kyle Pitts was the one that fell into my lap. So it's not a position of strength, obviously, but it's a guy who I think has like post-hype sleeper upside, if you will, where it's like we were hyping him up for 4 straight years, and now things are everybody's cooled on him so much that nobody wants in, maybe to a fault, and so maybe I get a little bit lucky there.
And I think that you have enough depth at wide receiver to where you can potentially swing one of those for another tight end if someone's willing to give up one of the ones that they have, if they have some extra depth there. But then you got the whole league riled up in the 13th round, taking Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who almost everyone probably had circled as like their last round pick, and you secured him in that 13th round. Of course, with the uncertainty with Brian Robinson and his future there, he could potentially be seeing a lot more snaps. Then you took Texans defense, Cam Little, kicker, Justin Fields as your backup quarterback, and then you ended out with Nick Chubb and Zach Ertz, 2 other veterans. As I'm grading this, Jeremy, I if it were not for you auto picking with that pick and taking George Kittle there instead, I'd probably give this an A+, because I really do like Lamar. Wow. and I really do like this team a lot. Not because of you, but because of your internet provider, I'm giving it an A- because of the tight end position. But overall, I think you've got really good depth at every other spot. Do you have any other thoughts you wanted to add on the remainder of your team?
Well, I like my running back depth. I think it's fine, right? I even I feel like you steal Nick Chubb a little bit if you take him with your next to last pick, because if he turns back the clock and he's a little bit healthy, right? Joe Mixon on that team is not healthy, and it's kind of a smorgasbord of bleh back there too. So I think my running back room is looking really nice. I don't love what I had to do at tight end, but I mean, if I had to pick between waiting at quarterback and waiting at tight end, I probably would have in the end waited at quarterback. But you can't deny that Lamar Jackson is last year he scored 440 fantasy points. I mean,
incredible.
He won leagues because he was a 5th round pick last year at quarterback and scored that many. So if that happens again, and I think that he's kind of figured out how to stay healthy, knock on wood. So we'll see if he can continue that this year. But that's kind of how I felt. But not to gloss over to how your draft fell together here, because a couple guys, just to go back over yours, that I was looking at, and I was bummed that it didn't end up working out for me to get Calvin Ridley and Matthew Golden. Calvin Ridley, he's set up for major success with a potentially really good quarterback. He's the first overall pick at quarterback. They've got rapport. Who else is there? He's going to get all the targets as well in that offense. So I think that he's been underrated and undervalued because it's a rookie quarterback, and he's kind of like a low end number 1, right? But he fits his offense really well. And then Matthew Golden, I think, ends up being the number 1 receiver on one of the best offenses in the league. So I really like those 2 picks. I did think that your running back depth is a little sketchy. If you just look past the first 2 guys that you drafted, and this is just grading your draft. Now that you've got Chase Brown in that mix, it's a little bit different. But since we have 2 flex spots, that would be my only area where I'm ooh, what happens to Andrew if one of his guys gets hurt? He's going to have to play a lot of receivers probably at that point.
Yeah, I usually like to go running back heavy. It makes it a little bit more difficult when you're picking at the back end of the first round. But
Yeah.
I drafted James Conner at the beginning of the sixth, which, based on where he was going, I thought was pretty good value. And the fact that a lot of the other running backs were already off the board, I wanted DeAndre Swift. SJ Poor, who I'm in another league with, took him in the fifth round. So I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. And, Joe Mixon was still available. I didn't want to fall for that. I'm already stuck with him in a salary cap league. I'm paying like a $30. I mean, like a tenth of my salary for that league is on Joe Mixon, and I can't get rid of him. So it's not a good situation there. But RJ Harvey was gone. Like all the guys I had targeted were gone. So it was really between James Conner and Tony Pollard. And I guess David Montgomery was there as well. So I could have gone Montgomery, but I was able to swing a trade after the draft. Somebody really wanted the Steelers defense. So actually offered me a little bit of extra fantasy dollars as well. But I'm like, dollars doesn't matter as much. Let's just, do the trade straight up. So I ended up getting Chase Brown in that trade and trading away James Conner because S.J. Poor also took Trey Benson in the 15th round, who I thought I could probably get. I would have taken 2 picks later. I ended up taking Jaden Blue, the guy that you were looking at. But I was going to handcuff Connor with Trey Benson there. But that didn't work out. Fortunately, I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, you don't. You've got Chase Brown. You've got a good 3-man crew there leading the way for you. Josh Jacobs, James Cook, and Chase Brown. So you got to feel good about your starting group there. And I think right now you're projected to score the most points in week 1 of any of the rosters that were taken here. So it looks pretty good. But I appreciate your fair grade there for mine as well. And I think we both did a good job, right? We're seasoned pros at this point.
Yes, I mean, if Cam Little keeps hitting these 70-yard field goals, I mean, we need to add like an extra scoring element. Yep. Sleeper needs to add it. 60-plus yard field goals, 70-plus yard field goals. Like, how many points do you get for that? It needs to just keep going up and over.
So you can score field goals by the yard now, like tenth of a point per yard if you wanted to do that like you do for running backs. And I do that in one league, and it's fun because if somebody hits like a 60-yard field goal, you get 6 points out of it. So it makes it gives a little bit higher stakes, but in correlation with that, or as like a counter to that, I also weight it more if a guy misses like a short kick. Like if it's under 30 yards and they miss it, you lose like 5 points.
Oh my goodness!
Because that should just never happen if you're a kicker in the NFL. But yeah, so those were our drafts. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive into some of our favorite picks and maybe some questionable picks, but we're going to kind of come at this from like maybe a value perspective, so that if you're listening to this and you haven't drafted yet in your league, kind of our thoughts on where some guys ended up in this sleeper format here, which is half PPR. Is that right, Andrew? That's what we do is half PPR. I should know that for sure before I draft probably, but that's how it is. So we'll come back and we'll take a look at it from that perspective here in just a second. Don't go anywhere. Not the Steelers fix. The Draft Dynasty Podcast will be right back after this. And we are back here on the Draft Dynasty Podcast. It's Andrew Wilbar and Jeremy Betz here. We're breaking down our FFSN Fantasy Draft, and we kind of went over our teams in the front, but it was a lot of fun. It took about 2 hours, so guys were invested in their picks, taking their time, looking through everything. But it was a lot of fun. There were some trades, which you talked about, Andrew, and sleepers. A lot of fun to do. Not just you and Corey. There were a couple other. There was some more action down the road as well. So it was fun. But I wanted to get kind of your thoughts, Andrew. Let's start kind of towards the top of the draft with this. But any surprise picks or picks that you really love the value for within maybe those first 3 or 4 rounds?
I'm looking at the draft board now, and I mean, I do like your T. Higgins pick at the end of the 4th round. I thought that was really good value there. Brian Thomas falling to the 3rd round, I thought was good value. T. Zoller ended up getting him. And I'm going to throw out Jalen Hurts. I know that he went ahead of Jaden Daniels, but with all of those goal line sneaks that he's going to get, that's going to rack up a lot of points in a league that is still 6 points for a rushing touchdown, 4 for a passing touchdown. So S.J. Poore in the third round, getting him was good. And a lot of people are saying, how Bucky Irving is getting maybe a little overdrafted. I think that there is a legit possibility that he could still finish as a top 5 fantasy running back this year based on the amount of volume he could see. And S.J. Poore landed him as well. I really like the team that he put together there. His receiver depth is not incredible, but he's got good running backs. So I liked that. Those were some of my standout ones. I guess the main one that surprised me that he fell, but not quite as big a fan of, is Puka Nacua falling toward the end of the second round. It's just because of Matthew Stafford's health. I know that he's playing, but how healthy is he going to be? And that would be my one concern with Puka, but still overall where he was taken, not bad value.
Yeah, I like those a lot. I was looking at Brian Thomas Jr. going in the third round, like the middle of the third round, 4th pick in the third round, actually, to T. Zoller. And I just think that that's good value. He could have gone earlier. I pass on him for Lamar Jackson. Nico Collins went ahead of him. A.J. Brown went ahead of him. And Malik Neighbors did as well. And I would probably have him ahead of all of those guys in my rankings. So I thought that was good value there. I actually think that the conversation has gone too far on the Dolphins side of things with like drafting their players and stuff, because when this offense is healthy with Tua, it's the best offense in the NFL over the last 3 or 4 years. It's the most efficient offense in the NFL. It's the most explosive offense in the NFL. And so you landing Tyreek Hill in the middle of the third round, I thought is great value. This is a guy who 2 years ago was the wide receiver 1 for fantasy. 2 years ago. And last year, some injuries. Last year, Tua didn't play the full season. If that changes, then I think that he could be fantastic again. I really do. And I don't think he's slowed down so much that he's not going to be an effective deep threat in a Mike McDaniel offense. So I like that a lot. Before he traded him to you, I thought Captain Underpants taking Chase Brown in the 4th round, that was fantastic value for him. And then he traded him to you, so you end up with that value there. Let's see, Mike Evans. I don't know about you, but I just think that Mike Evans, and this is probably coming from the time that the Steelers spent with the Buccaneers in joint practices, but Mike Evans still has it. I think that Mike Evans, as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be a dog in that offense as well. Baker Mayfield's going to throw the ball his way a lot with Chris Godwin ailing, and good receivers like Emeka Egbuka behind him, but unproven, right, in the NFL level. So a lot of balls going to Mike Evans. I really liked him a lot too.
There's a lot of receivers that deserve to go into the Hall of Fame, Hines Ward most namely, but Mike Evans deserves an opportunity to one day go into Canton just because of the consistency. There's been no receiver as consistent in the NFL as Mike Evans has been over the last decade, really. Going down a little bit further down the board, like I said, I thought DeAndre Swift was a slight reach in the 5th round. I think just based on the upside of the offense in general and that's where the position starts to thin out a little bit. It's understandable, but I felt like that was a little bit of a high pick. Going like on the opposite side, I don't think either of us are huge fans of Breece Hall this year.
No.
It's just, I mean, I've never been a big Breece Hall fan. But now you add in Braylon Allen is there, and they want to make it more of a 1-2 type backfield. And I just don't think they have the dogs up front that the Lions had to be as efficient as what, say, the Lions running game was last year with Montgomery and Gibbs. So overall, I think Ocalico has a very balanced team. As long as Warren can pop at tight end, he's got Gibbs, he's got Josh Allen, he's got a couple good receivers in McConkey and Metcalf. He's got a pretty well-rounded roster, and Ricky Pearsall in the 10th round, I think you already mentioned him. He's a really good value there and could be the wide receiver 1 in that offense for all we know. So there's a lot of things to like about his draft, but that was one spot I wasn't the biggest fan of. I think he's a little skeptical at the running backs behind Gibbs.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like Pacheco is fine. Like I was more of a fan of like the guys he got at wide receiver, and then landing Josh Allen. I mean, Josh Allen just makes your fantasy team more fun, right? He's a guy that you turn it on every week. You know he's going to get you 20, maybe 40 points, right? He's just one of those guys that can do that for you. Um, I think the other thing you have to mention in the Breece Hall conversation is Justin Fields, who I drafted as my backup. We saw it in the preseason. Inside 20 yards, if Justin Fields sees a lane, he's going. And they're going to do that a lot because if you just design a running play to Breece Hall in the red zone, then that's just a running play. But if you drop back into pass sets and run guys down the field into the end zone in the red zone, and Justin Fields sees man coverage and he can just take off and run, I mean, you've got basically 2 plays called in the huddle in one there, and give yourself a little bit more of an opportunity to score. And I think Justin Fields is going to take those opportunities. And he's a big dude. Once he gets that opportunity to get into the end zone, he usually gets there. So that's going to be interesting. But I loved his Tyler Warren pick. I want to call your attention, though, to this turnaround here between the 8th and 9th rounds for Kyle at the first overall pick as it snaked back to him. He took Zay Flowers, who still being there at the back end of the 8th, I think is really good value there. But Zach Charbonnet has been really, really impressive in training camp and preseason. And there was a report out today, actually, from the insiders like Ian Rappaport, saying that Zach Charbonnet, in the minds of the Seahawks coaching staff, is their like 1A or 1B in that backfield. So they really think that this is going to be a timeshare type backfield. And I think having Charbonnet in that spot as kind of like a backup running back is good. And you needed somebody who might be able to pop, because for his draft, he's got Devon Achane, can't stay healthy. He's got Chuba Hubbard, who I like, but this is Carolina we're talking about. And then David Montgomery, the second guy in that Detroit backfield that's gone through some overhaul this offseason. So Charbonnet there was, I thought, a good pick.
Yeah, one pick that was a little surprising to me, going a little bit further down, State of Steelers, Daniel J. took C.J. Stroud in the 11th round, which I thought was a little bit higher when you look at some of the other quarterbacks who were still available at the time. Justin Herbert was still there. Dak Prescott was still there. Kyler Murray was still there. So I thought that was a little bit high for Stroud. I know that he is I think he is poised to have a better season than last, but he doesn't have Tank Dell. The offensive line's the biggest question mark for me. They didn't really do a whole lot to address that. Although I do getting Patrick Mahomes at the end of the 7th round. Everyone's knocking Pat, but that's still a really good value for a guy who we know has the upside to be great in fantasy if given the opportunity to, you almost have to, if you're a Patrick Mahomes fantasy owner, you almost have to hope that the Chiefs' defense is bad again, so that the Chiefs have to score more points.
Right. And you want that like extra what would you call it? Like the extra ability there for Mahomes to be able to get into scoring positions, because he just hasn't been scoring with those upper guys anymore. It's just been more ball control offense for them. So it's a more explosive nature there. I was trying to go through and look for any stacks that I really liked, but I didn't really see that many.
Jordan
My favorite
Love
stack,
and Matthew Golden.
There you go. There's one for you. Because I was going to try to get Zay Flowers, but Caleb Johnson was still there, so I was like, I'm just going to do that. Because I took Lamar Jackson, but I don't know. Okay, so
Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith, which is an okay stack.
Yep. I was going to say my favorite stack of the year is actually a quarterback and running back, and it's Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. Like, if I draft Saquon Barkley, I'm making it a priority to go get Jalen Hurts, because one of those two guys is getting the goal line touchdown carry. One of those two guys is getting it. Nobody else is getting it in that offense. So if you have both of them, you're guaranteed to get those rushing touchdowns. And Saquon Barkley had double-digit rushing touchdowns last year. So did Jalen Hurts. I mean, that's a lot of scores for your roster. That's my favorite stack. It didn't happen in this situation, but it is fun. Okay, here's the one. Kyle's got Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. He did land Joe Burrow in the 5th round with Jamar Chase, and that is probably the high-end stack of all of them that you want at quarterback and wide receiver, and he did land that. So good on Kyle there for landing that, in my opinion.
If you want to, I don't know if you call this a stack, but try a 3-way type thing with quarterback, receiver, and tight end. Calico got Josh Allen, Khalil Shakir, and Dalton Kincaid as well.
Yeah, and Kincaid's his tight end too, so you don't have to feel pressured to start him because you've got Tyler Warren there. Honestly, though, like George Kittle in the 5th round is fantastic value. I was looking through the tight ends here. Tucker Kraft in the 10th round.
I like that.
Pardon me if I think Tucker Kraft might be a top 6, 7 tight end in fantasy this year, and you got him in the 10th round if you're State of Steelers. I love that a lot. So, and then the strangest part was Kyle ended up having to do some auto picks here, and the computer auto picked 3 kickers in a row for him in this draft, and they were Harrison Butker, Kaimi Fairbairn, and Tyler Bass. So not any world beaters there either. I think Butker's going to be good. I think Fairbairn's probably going to be fine. But man, 3 kickers in a row, auto pick. Come on, that's just messed up.
I mean, sleeper is brutal if you missed the draft. I was in another fantasy draft past week. I kid you not, one of the guys that didn't show up, it drafted him 6 receivers in a row to start off the draft. And the first running back it drafted for him in the 8th round, Quinshon Judkins.
Oh man, that's crazy. So
like Javonte Williams is his RB2 and might be his RB1 to start off the year.
Goodness. Quinshon Judkins went in the 11th round for us. I'm trying to see where Dylan Sampson went because, I mean, there's a world where Dylan Sampson scores just as much as Judkins for half the price. Yeah, he went in the 17th round. To you. You took him in the 17th round, right?
Yep.
Dylan Sampson? Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, you have to feel good about that your value you got there compared to the other back that's in Cleveland. Let's see. Blitzburg had 4 wide receivers in a row between the 10th and 13th rounds. Jerry Jeudy, Josh Downs, Darnell Mooney, Jaden Reed. I actually like that group. I do. With the quarterback situations going on here, I think Jeudy is obviously high volume. That's what you're hoping for. Josh Downs with Daniel Jones might get a few more of those slot targets more regularly, so I like that. Mooney, when he gets healthy for Atlanta, he was really good down the stretch with Michael Penix Jr. And then Jaden Reed, one of your guys there, Andrew. I mean, this Packers team's going to throw the ball a lot, right? And once he gets healthy, I think he's going to be a big part of that. So he was the wide receiver you wanted last year in fantasy out of Green Bay. I don't see why he couldn't be very valuable for a fantasy team this year. But those 4 in a row, and then Drake May, like the upside for Drake May as kind of a dual threat quarterback is absolutely there. 400-plus rushing yards last year, didn't even start the full year. I think he had 2 rushing touchdowns. I think they're going to lean into that a little bit more this year. So getting him in the 14th round as your starting quarterback. Blitzburg waited until the 14th round to land his starting quarterback. That's bold. And then he backed it up with Brock Purdy. We were talking about this pre-show. I think that's a really good double down there to get Brock Purdy with your final pick. You got to feel pretty good about that too. Brock Purdy was the 6th ranked quarterback in fantasy in 2023. So just 2 years ago, he was a borderline top 5 fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, the last thing that I'll mention, Thomas Dollar's draft. I don't hate the Quinshon Judkins pick. He fell all the way to the 11th round, I think. At that point, I think it's worth the risk because if Judkins plays, we know the upside he has, especially the touchdown upside on the goal line. I mean, Joe Flacco's not going to be doing much of any movement at all at his age, I don't think. Yeah. I think the only mistake that he made was, I mean, Dylan Sampson was still there in the 17th round. If he could have taken Dylan Sampson there just as a handcuff, taking 11th and 17th round running backs, and you're probably getting a starting level running back out of the two at some point once you get probably week 4, week 5, once we know the outlook of that backfield.
Yeah.
I think that would have been really a home run there.
Yeah, I like that too. Let's hit Corey Eckenroth real quick before we go, because he's with us on the fix right now. Derrick Henry with the 5th pick in the first round. He was RB3 off the board, so higher than most people would take him. But I mean, if he is anything close to last year, well worth that pick, I think. You guys had a big trade situation going on there, so he ended up with Jaden Daniels as his quarterback, but he backed it up with Jared Goff down the road, and he actually has Jared Goff and Sam Laporta as a stack there if he wants to go that route. And then let's look at the end of this draft here. He's got your boy Luther Burden with his last pick. That could be really fun. And before that, he took Isaac Tesla, who's looking like the next Dynamo over there in Detroit. That's a high volume passing or a high volume offense that's gonna score a lot of points. And if Tesla is pushing for wide receiver 2 type results over there behind Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams, then getting that in the next to last round of an 18-round draft is pretty good for Corey there too. So good job, Corey. You done good in your draft there. And it was a lot of fun. So, Andrew, any final thoughts on this before we head out? I hope the listeners enjoyed catching up on this draft. And Jaylen Warren went before Caleb Johnson in this, I guess, is one of those things that I'll point out. And from the preseason game that I was heavily watching, Jaylen Warren showed us why Caleb Johnson was drafted. In my opinion, I think Jaylen Warren's fun. I think he's explosive. I think he's a good rotational back. But as a lead back, he scares me a little bit. He put a ball on the ground. He was slipping and sliding all over the place. He's a little sporadic. He's a little inconsistent. He's there for sparks. And Caleb Johnson can be more of the grinder type. He can be more of the like the down-to-down runner and maybe break a few big ones. But it's why, Najee Harris had some success in Pittsburgh, even though it was not explosive, it was not efficient. I think Caleb Johnson's going to be more so, but I do think that Jaylen Warren is not an RB1 in this league. So Caleb Johnson's going to fit really well there. And I think he's going to be a steal for fantasy drafts. Got him in the 8th round, so I feel pretty good about that. But any final thoughts for you, Andrew? That was my final thought.
Yeah, all of that is fair. I think the grand theme throughout all of this is be wise, know what you're going into. Like, depending on where you're picking, find a philosophy and stick to it throughout the draft and whatever you're at. I have found, and not everyone would agree with this, I was reading an article from The Athletic the other day, and I understand where the author was coming from, where he's saying just stack your running backs and receivers, and you can wait on tight end, you can wait on quarterback. I understand that, but just keep in mind that if you have enough guys where you really do your homework, then get into the nitty-gritty with the running backs and receivers especially, you have to start a tight end, and there are not 10 good every week tight ends.
Yep.
If you aren't confident, I remember the year Mark Andrews broke out, and I hit on him that year. I waited to draft a tight end until him. The following year, Jonnu Smith. But that doesn't happen every year. I tried to do that the following year, and I totally blew it with, I don't know if I had drafted Tyler Eifert or what, but it was a mistake, whatever it was. So it is expensive to get an elite tight end, getting one of those top 3 guys. But just keep in mind that everybody has to start someone at that spot. And if you have one of those guys, that's more points you have automatically every week than everyone else. So that's just my little piece of advice. If you can get one of the top 3 tight ends, it might be worth it if you're doing your homework on these receivers, because there's a lot of really good receivers in rounds 8 through 14.
There really are. It's the deepest group in fantasy. You can wait at wide receiver.
Yep.
Go get your running backs. And I mean, I did it at quarterback this year. I didn't do it at tight end, but go get a quarterback early. Go get a tight end early. It can pay off for you in the long run. So, but yes, stick to a philosophy. If you do end up waiting, then make sure that you are like getting good depth pieces. That you're not skipping ahead and drafting defenses and kickers and stuff like that.
Yes.
Drafting 2 quarterbacks. Load up where you can take advantage and maybe have some trade bait to go get one of those starting caliber tight ends later on down the road when somebody comes out or breaks out onto the scene. So good stuff, Andrew. A lot of fun. That's going to do it for us here on the Draft Dynasty Podcast. Until next time, keep drafting, everybody.